go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask Me Anything, brought to you by Moser Consulting. I'm Brian Gentrup, producer Brian, and I'm doing double duty as host this week. We're thrilled to have you with us today for this episode of Ask Me Anything, because today we're going to be joined by some of Moser's experts who are going to share with us some of the best moments they've had in their careers. Okay, and joining us now is Moser's own Jordan, who you've seen in a couple episodes as host. He's joining us now as a guest.
So in a past life, I've been working for MSPs for a while now. I can remember I had a client that was a country club golf course type deal. They had like a pool, they had bar, restaurant, golf course. It was awesome. So they had this point of sale system. I knew absolutely nothing about point of sale at that time. They had two separate locations and then lots of different areas. Let's say maybe 15 around two areas. They had a point of sale terminal. So it's like a little thin client and a receipt printer. And they were tied together. They were like hard coded inside the application and a couple other places. Comes time for them to do a remodel. And the manager of the club at the time, he decides to just take everything apart and put it in a box. Guess how much of it he labeled? Absolutely nothing. So I think I spent like it had to be at least a month, if not like two, trying to figure out like, okay, this is the application, this is how it works. When you print something, this is where it goes, this is why it goes there, this is how to make it go somewhere else. And I had to make like new terminals in the app. I had to make new printers with drivers and different kinds of like hard-coded instructions, and it was a total nightmare. But at the end of it, I earned quite a few free meals and drinks, and everybody eventually lived happily ever after. So it was a big deal for me back then.
How many times in the process of putting them back together did this person who had just thrown them all pell-mell, willy-nilly, your colloquialism of choice, into
Yep.
the box? How many times during the reassembling and Easter egg hunt, jigsaw puzzle, uh, during that process did they swing by and be like, I'm so sorry?
It was at least a couple times.
And they
Yeah,
at some point did realize what a huge and absolutely colossal mistake and mess they had made, right?
it cost them a lot of money. I can't imagine because, it was probably at least 80, 100 hours, something like that, over like a month or two.
But still far cheaper than replacing everything so it would come boxed and already paired.
That's true.
Man, awesome. Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Joining us next is Sarah, and she's got a story that's probably going to sound familiar to many of us who work in or around IT, where she became her family's go to person for all things technical that need to be fixed or dealt with.
So, a little while ago, my parents reached out about some photos they had lost from, of course, they were my brother's baby photos from 2002. They had all mine, so I'm safe. However, they were hoping to eventually recover some of those that they were missing. And they knew it was either on a CD or an old laptop from the early 2000s. It's just the laptop wouldn't charge anymore, so it wouldn't turn on. And the CD, we were pretty sure my dad had somehow written over the photos that had been on it. So, not very straightforward. But they said, Sarah, you're in tech, right? And I was like, I guess that's not my specialty, but so I decided to take up the task and I tried a few different things, but I was eventually able to get a lot of those photos back. So from the old laptop, since it wouldn't turn on, I used the internet and YouTube, my two favorite things. And I basically had to remove the hard drive from the bottom of the laptop, and I had to purchase a hard drive to USB adapter so I could go on my computer and search through the folder. Of course, the photos were not on the computer, they were on the CD that had been written over. So, of course, it was the harder option. So, for the CD, I actually had to purchase the software. It's called ISO Buster. It's actually pretty cool. But I just had to, I was going to say plug the CD, and I have an external CD player since those don't come on laptops anymore, unfortunately. So it was able to see where it had two different like write histories. So I was able to go into the first one that had been written over, and it was able to recover a bunch of photos as well as this folder that had a bunch of, it looked like patchwork photos where it couldn't fully piece together everything. However, yeah, eventually I was able to get a lot of those back. So my parents were pretty happy, but of course now they're just sitting in a flash drive. But I felt pretty cool. I felt like a hacker from a movie.
Nice. Yeah, it
Yeah.
reminds me, I'm the AV guy. My mom and dad used to call me, specifically more my mother than my father, but she's like, hey, the surround sound on the entertainment system isn't
Yeah.
working. Like I'm hitting them. It's like, all right. And completely blind to having seen it in the past and interacted with it personally previously, I was able to say, walk up to the stack, open the glass door, third component down with a big
Mhm.
dial in the middle of it. Make sure the button on the left has a green light, not a red light. Green light, okay, cool. Press the giant wheel in the middle of it. What does it say? It says phono. Okay, spin it until it says LD, which is
Mhm.
because it was an older system that was technically that was for Laserdisc,
Oh,
but
yeah, yeah.
it was also for whatever you had actually plugged components you had plugged into that thing that corresponded to Laserdisc, which was
Mhm.
then their satellite TV and their DVD player.
Oh, wow.
She's like, "Oh, there it is!" Like, and just 4 or 5 times, completely blind, just talked her
Wow.
through getting it going. So that's a remote AV story is one of my
I'm
prouder
impressed.
moments.
I'm impressed. I always have to have my grandparents put on FaceTime when we do stuff, so
If you haven't seen it in a while, or if you've never seen it, that adds a level of difficulty.
yes, it does. And you know what? I even had I used to work at the Staples print shop. And even though I was just printing documents, I actually had a couple of older ladies come up and ask me for phone help. I was like, we have a technology section, they could, I don't know, but you know,
You looked safer.
I guess so. I was like, I've never seen this phone brand before, but I'll try.
Well, thank you for joining us and thank you for sharing your story. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, joining us next is a sometimes host and now turned guest of Asking Anything, Kevin, joining us with a favorite moment. Kevin, go ahead, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
4 or 5 years ago, we were having some issues with the charge point. And when I say we, I mean Moser, the charge point EV charger right outside headquarters there. And so I did some troubleshooting on it and figured out that we needed to have a replacement head, which is the whole upper half of that whole charging station. So I worked with their technicians. They wanted to send someone out, and it was going to be anywhere between $1,600 and $2,000 for a tech to come out and install the head. After a little bit of research on YouTube, the greatest knowledge base known to man, that is, I decided that I would do it. So I talked with Ty and convinced him that I was knowledgeable enough and knew what I was doing. The head came in. I went into the back room there where all the power comes in and through the main breakers, which is very important unless you want to have an electrifying day. So through the breakers, I went out there. There were a few set screws and some other things, but it was basically on a slide rail, and the whole top half slid off. The main thing is that I had to install was a 3D transponder, so basically so it could communicate back to the network. So installed that on there, got the new head in place, and I did not die, obviously, because I'm here talking about it. But yeah, so end up saving Moser almost $2,000 in labor just by me doing it by a quick YouTube video. So I think that was one of the leading reasons that I ended up getting the duct tape award, because I just figured out a way to make it work and did it myself instead of waiting on somebody else. Can you see the duct tape on the duct tape award?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So when we were moving one of our multiple times, it broke, so I had to duct tape my duct tape award.
Nice. So now, and I have, it's been a while. Like we usually we see each other remotely and we see each other at work. I have not seen you after dark in a while. I'm going to assume you don't glow.
I do glow
You
sometimes.
clearly shutting off the power before working on anything electrical is the most important step.
100%. Do your research. It's kind of like think, plan, do. Three simple steps. Think about what you're going to do, plan on what you're going, and then just do it. It wasn't that massive of a thing, but I could understand where some people would feel concerned messing with, I don't know, 10,000 volts.
Growing up, my father worked in maintenance at a power plant, like one of the coal-fired plants down on the Ohio River in southern Indiana. And there were signs all over the place, like, do not enter. If you touch anything in this cage, not only will it kill you, but it will hurt the entire time you are dying. Kevin, thanks very much. Appreciate you taking the time to share the story with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. It was an honor to be here. Appreciate it.
All right, and next up, we have Gary joining us with one of his favorite moments that he wanted to share. Gary, thank you very much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate being here. One of my favorite moments, one of my most repeated sea stories since I was in the Navy, it's always a sea story of being in a network consulting role is I have a client. They had 4 buildings across this not too widespread campus, but it was fairly close, and they wanted to replace their network. So as part of the setup, they had also set up this data center link using MPLS to provide a nice thick pipe back to the data center and to get their internet. Because of their location, they wanted to be able to dynamically fail over to a different internet because they're in rural Indiana. So as part of the process, I went through and redesigned it. I got each building set up on their own little network. I got the individual branches of the network set up for dynamic routing, and they were handing off everything to the pipe just fine. So the pipe knew where everything was on the other side of the pipe, and the data center knew how to get to everything else. Then they were like, well, we want to add in a couple firewalls. So with proper internet connections. And I went, okay, sure, let's just get that set up. So they brought in a couple firewalls and they hooked up their internet to both branches of their campus. And I got OSPF put in and I paired BGP across their IPsec tunnel on a higher distance back to the data center. Well, typical auto healing dynamic routing setup. And I was like, cool, this should work really well. I didn't realize how well it would work. So I got this set up, I closed the project out, and 4 months later, I got a call from the customer. He's like, Gary, I just want to tell you, we had an outage, and we didn't know it. We had one of our customer service reps call in and complain that their phone quality wasn't quite up to par. They weren't certain what was going on. It just wasn't quite as good. So they looked at their monitoring solution and they were like, oh, our primary internet's been down for 45 minutes. My dynamic failover worked so well that no one knew the primary internet was offline. It was just that smooth, that buttery. And then once they finally got the MPLS provider to fix their big fat pipe back in, everyone just failed back over properly. And no one was the wiser that they even had an outage. My favorite story.
It failed so beautifully that they didn't even know they had failed.
Yep. Yeah, I did not expect that. I expected to get some call that we went down 5 minutes ago and we just took care of it. It just happened. But in this case, it was just buttery smooth.
Did you hear mine?
No, I didn't.
It's been about 10 years, maybe a little more. I was working for a software company on the north side of Indy, and I did all of our AV stuff, much like I do at Moser now. And the team of people that were in charge of remote fixing and support for our internal systems and our computers and everything were having a presentation in one of our main conference rooms. So they called me and they're like, hey, the speakers and the projector and the screen, they're not working in tandem. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. It's like, okay, hold on, I'll be right over. So these guys that are in charge of keeping our computers up to date or fixing when things go awry are in this room. And I walk in and I look at them and I said, first things first, did you unplug it and plug it back in? And they looked at me and went, no. So I walked over to the stack. I pulled the plug on the whole thing, counted to 10, plugged it back in, and everything worked perfectly. And I didn't say anything to them. I just looked and I raised my fist like John Bender at the end of the Breakfast Club and walked out of the room.
Awesome. That's a nice story. Gotta love those too. When it's just a simple, easy fix and you're like, yep, that's me.
I wonder how many thousands of times in their career any of them who said, "Did you turn it off and turn it back on? Did you unplug it and plug it back in?" And it was the first thing that I just said, and they hadn't tried it yet. So that was, yeah, that was that felt good.
Yeah, I can imagine. That sounds like it.
Awesome. All
Cool.
right. Well, thanks so much for joining and taking the time. Really do appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
And now we're going to be joined by Becky, who has volunteered to share a couple of amazing, awesome moments from her career with us.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Great to be here. One of my favorite experiences in work, we had to go scope it out, figure out what technology was going to be there. And it actually had been used by like a legal firm. And so you never really know what type of clientele you're going to have with that. We went down into this creepy basement and it was mostly empty other than custom built shelving that was just like pieces of wood all screwed together. And amidst the empty, dusty cobweb space, there was this huge fur coat hanging on a hanger from like a ducting rafter kind of in the back. And I walk over, I say, well, what do we have here? This little gem. And despite all of the good intentions I usually have on any given day, I decided the best option at that moment was to throw that bad boy on. And you know what? It was warm and it was very soft. And despite being the only thing in this ramshackle, creepy basement, it was actually in very good shape. A little bit of background on me. I'm a project manager by trade, and I have my project management professional certification. That is a PMP. My team knows this. And so from that moment on, this was now referred to as my PMP coat. And honestly, it was just such a fun, funny whole experience for the team that we worked together. And you're never going to find a moment of camaraderie other than making poor choices followed up by silly taglines or silly puns thereafter. So it was really fun. It all brought us together, and people still talk about it to this day.
I would have been hard pressed not to put the coat on and then do like the classic, oh, that's a photo that was taken in the woods. Like, oh, that there's Bigfoot. Like that
Oh,
kind of, those photos would have been taken immediately had I been there.
that's something I can still, maybe on my next visit, my next client visit, I'll check it out. We can go make a couple staged moments. My career has been nonlinear. I haven't worked at Moser all my life. I actually used to work for the Indiana Pacers professional basketball team. The staff that supports the Indiana Pacers also supports the Indiana Fever and the Fieldhouse. They would often do announcements about big scale events that were coming or that had been like awarded to the Fieldhouse, that, big opportunities we'd won. And we had an national gymnastics championship many years back. And the person who came to our facility to announce that was none other than Simone Biles. And she is as adorable and amazing in person as she is on the television screens that we've all seen over the past several Olympics. But beyond that, what they did as service to everybody's funny bone was, as she was making this announcement, all 4'7" of her was standing next to Mr. Larry Bird himself. And you never really realize how tall Larry Bird is or how short Simone Biles is until they are positioned right next to each other. So having like a front row seat to that was just a very fun, exciting stuff, as well as just comic relief for anybody's day. So yeah, really cool to kind of get around and experience different parts of those career moments.
I'm just picturing how far I would have to zoom out to get Larry Bird, who is 6'9",
So
and
tall.
Simone Biles in the same shot.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can't remember at this moment if they had to have a small pedestal for her to reach the microphone at the lectern, but yeah, it was visually interesting. So,
Yeah, the contrast would be stark.
yeah. Well, thanks, Brian. I appreciate you letting me tell my stories.
Thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time to come and tell them. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Ask Anything, brought to you by Moser Consulting. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our resident experts and their stories of some of the more memorable times they've had in and around IT. Be sure to join us next time when we dive even deeper with our resident experts and explore what they're currently working on. Don't forget to share your ideas or topics with us on social media. And in the meantime, please remember to give us a rating and subscribe to our feed wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, so long, everybody.